All right. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to TPLALive SwordLab. So today we have another topic that we've been kind of carrying over from last week. We've got our panel here, Damon Honeycutt, Jared Miracle. How you two doing? All right.
Thanks.
Oh yes, muting.
Yeah, great, doing awesome.
Yes. Yes, so anyway, what we've got going today, as the title suggests, is Old Soldiers, How to Become One. There is a lot of talk in the martial arts, of course, about performance and getting the most out of things and being powerful and all that kind of stuff, and victory and all that good stuff. And oftentimes, what is often portrayed in fiction, at least, is that old warriors, warriors who get old, you know, very much like the samurai, are kind of looked down upon because they're dying of old age instead of in battle or whatever. But the thing is that, well, we're not going to die in battle, and we shouldn't want to. So most of martial arts, actually, what it turns out to be about is about keeping one safe, either through technique, you know, through training and all of that stuff. And there's a very large tradition in all of the martial arts based around that. So actually, why don't I throw it over to you, Jared? And why don't you kind of like open up the topic for us as we're going, as we start the show here. We can take it from there.
Sure thing. So we often kind of obliquely end up discussing among the council members, because we've all been at one form of combat sport or performance or something for enough years now that we've accrued injuries. And was it 2 or 3 weeks ago, we all sort of went off on a rail during a conversation about the many ways that people manage to permanently damage themselves in the course of what is otherwise, honestly, recreational activity. We're not training in TPLA to go off and fight a war. The idea here is to be able to train a healthy, long career and enjoy yourself and be better off as a person physically and in every other way for it. So then we began to talk about, well, what are the ways we've picked up over the years to maintain some longevity, not burn yourself out right away. You know, the idea is not to be a candle in the wind. We want to keep actually doing this, and it sort of fits in with that archetype of the old soldier or the old master or what have you. You know, Yoda makes it to 900 and he's using a cane, but he's still pretty spry. How realistically can we train? What are the methods that we use? What are our best practices that we've learned? What are some poor practices that we see that are popular? And why are we so constantly strict in talking about using proper gear? So those were some of the basic talking points that I felt we should really be discussing.
Yeah, no, totally. It's like I said, it's one of the core points of martial art. When we're training, and this is throughout history, when you're training, you're trying to figure out how not to kill your students and your training partners. You're looking to get better. You're not looking to accrue injuries before you go off into battle, or when they're. I have this book here, which is basically just diagrams of martial arts equipment or from the 1800s in Japan. And you can see right here, you've got the Kendo, the familiar Kendo
Shinai.
armor right there.
Oh yeah, Bogu.
Yep. So it's not new. All of this stuff goes on, and we make a big point of this, is that in the in the reality of these weapons, right, they're supposed to cause debilitating, sometimes fatal injury. That does not lend itself to to continued training, as it were.
It's a non-habit forming behavior,
Right.
as some segments of the military like to say.
Yes.
In fact, going with your example, I thought this would be fun. The Kendo Sword, the shinai that's often used, which we all know it's that split bamboo pole, actually originated as this. This is a Fukuro shinai, which it's shinai just means the split bamboo pole. Fukuro means bag because it's encased in a sack of leather. This was invented by Kami Izumi Ise no Kami in the late 16th century to replace the wooden swords that people were using for safety purposes. And this thing, just like a kendo stick, you can bang people all day with it. You'll get bruised, but it doesn't do any permanent damage, generally speaking. Now, why would one of the most important swordsmen and military commanders in Japanese history feel the need to create something like that? Seems kind of counterintuitive if you buy into the tough guy narrative.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So, and that's a good point to talk about. Prior to a lot of this stuff, wooden swords are the norm, pretty much in any culture. But wooden swords have drawbacks. They're difficult to balance correctly. If you want them to balance like an actual weapon, you have to make them kind of comically oversized in places. You have to make the blade very thick. They splinter, they don't bend, they have zero flex, you know, and they hit hard. And there's a book called The Secret Histories of the Sword by Christoph Ambrose, or what's his last name? I don't remember his last name. Anyway, I'll check it. But he was looking into that. There are a number of murders that he found in the medieval era that were committed with wooden weapons, whether they be sticks or swords, you know, practice sword or something like that. It's a substantial weapon, you know, with that. But yeah, so like the safety gear and the safety weapons, that's of course one of the reasons we like the lightsaber, because it's the best, probably one of the best practice weapons that has yet to be invented. The blade flexes very nicely. You can balance it the way you want. You can make it as insubstantial as you want to make it a little less this, that, and the other. But yeah, but that's all traumatic injury. That's all the stuff coming in. We talk about that all the time. Let's talk about another type of injury, which is far more common and far more debilitating, which is overuse injury. Right? This is like arthritis, any of these like nagging injuries that you get, you know, they'll usually stem out of another one, right? Like you'll do something to your shoulder and then it will never be the same afterward, or something to that effect. How do we avoid these things? What are they? Right? All of that kind of thing. The systems that we practice, a lot of these have kind of intuitively set up ways to go about that. You know, in different systems. Well, like Damon, you've done a bunch of stuff from theater type stuff to martial arts and all of that. Within the Chinese milieu, what's common throughout that?
You mean as far as like a repetitive injury?
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, repetitive injuries or things that they do to try to prevent that.
Oh yeah, well, like nice easy flexibility stuff, like slow qigong movements where, you know, you're gently lengthening and massaging the connective tissue through movement, doing things on both sides pretty equally. And a lot of forms are not equal on both sides. There are some, but they're kind of few and far between, I've seen, you know, except for if they're like real basics. But when you do internal warm-ups and like a Jibin Gong or essential basics, usually those are pretty equal on both sides. Where it starts to get injurious, when I was with the Peking Opera, it was just, you know, okay, now we're going to put platforms on and you have to do the butterfly kick. You know, or and then it adds another thing, you know, that means you got, you know, heels that, you know, there's that performance thing, and then or you're wearing like the flags and you're tied down, So you have costume constraints, or you're doing the same role over and over again, as I did in the opera, but also as a dancer, and you just get, it's just a one-sided thing, like you see in athletic martial arts, where like wushu is a great example. You always see them practicing with knee braces on and wrist braces because they're all doing it on one side. Yeah. And that is the pressure of performance and competition. And, you know, same with fighters, I'm sure that there's always probably one side that might get more injured than the other. And that's the name of the game when you when you up it, and that's kind of like a burnout time that happens. The ways to do that are usually just, as I've gotten older, I've gotten softer but stronger, or sustained. You know, like I'm 46 now, but I'm stronger than I've ever been, and I'm actually kind of a little faster. However, I don't have the same kind of blitzy energy I had when I was a kid.
Yeah,
you know, I don't train crazy, but that doesn't mean I can't get crazy. It just means that there's a toll at the other end of it.
Right.
And I just got to be willing to make that decision of how much I want to suffer. You know, but a lot of, all the things I do are slow now. Even when I do my monkey forms, which are very low to the ground, I do all the basics very slow to keep myself strong. Do a lot of flexibility. First thing in the morning, I usually do some mild. I don't work to try to like get the splits like I used to. You know, I mean, I'm pretty good for my age, I guess you could say. But I mean, when I was in my 20s and training with Paulie, I would roll out of bed into the front splits. But that's youth. That same thing. And that's also just being nuts. And I got plenty of injuries training. You know, I broke my ankle, I cut my hand, you know, and let's see, what else did I do? I got like these broken ribs from getting kicked, you know, but those are those impact ones, you know. And I know I feel stuff on my left side because of my jiu-jitsu training, threw so much on one side that I know it just did a different densification on my bone on that side of my skeleton. And it's taken me years to, and it comes in my neck and my sacroiliac joint a lot because of those falls. And it's taken me years of equalized training in the sense of making sure my alignment's really good, and like my horse stances and bow stances and whatever stance that I do, make sure that it's like everything's stacked on top of each other and I feel engaged and expanded. So it becomes about refining the basics so you can do them when you're 90.
Yeah,
it's a long answer.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point you brought up, which is the one side of the body and all of that. We all have a dominant side of the body, right? So we're left-handed, we're right-handed, you know, whatever. We'll all have a little bit of something. There are physiological processes to help us, to stop us from becoming completely overdeveloped on one side, right? So you're not going to get a gigantic, huge arm on this side and a tiny little scrawny one over here, unless something's kind of wrong with you. But and there are things that can go wrong with that, but basically what that is, and you can try this. If you get one of those little grippers or any type of like a ball or something like that, stand with your arms kind of limp down by the side and then squeeze that ball as hard as you can in one hand and watch your other hand do this. Yeah. Right? There is a 40% contraction for each muscle on the opposite side of your body for every it's a co-contraction with the regular contraction over here. So if I'm doing my bicep at 100%, this other bicep's going at 40, right? And that's our body's way of keeping us kind of in equilibrium. However, when people talk about where they get injured the most, people will talk about, oh, you're not strong enough or you're not flexible enough. Yeah. And the thing about it is neither of these two things are true. You don't have to be flexible to stay away from injury. And you don't necessarily need to be very, very strong. You have to be strong enough, but like that. What happens for injury, which can be very predictive of injury, is an imbalance in that. You're stronger than you are flexible, or you're more flexible than you are strong, right? So it's like your body can not stop itself from going into a dangerous position, because either it doesn't have the strength to, or it has extra mobility and, you know, kind of goes there. Give you 2 examples. My thumbs are very easily dislocated. I remember being in a workshop for a German performance theater, and we were doing the splits, and I was picking myself up, you know, and you're on your hands like this, and this thumb went pop,
Ow.
and just popped right out, and I had to like put it right back in the middle of the class, like there, hurt like the dickens or whatever. That's just, you know, a thing. And then recently I had been hitting blocks in my training, in my progress, and then my trainer and I basically broke everything down, went back to my deadlift, and found out that I had a little imbalance in the deadlift, right? And that's what's more predictive of injury when we look at people, right? It's not whether how strong or how flexible you are, but if you are you good and in balance with your strength and your flexibility? Are those things, you know, good and in balance and can control each other and feed off each other?
I think that's a really central idea that we should be stressing to every member of the organization, really, because there seems to be a failing in modern schools that we used to have physical education. We really don't have physical education anymore. You know, learning to intelligently use and think with your body rather than, I don't know about you guys, when I was in high school, they used to just roll a basketball out on the court and say, go play. I still don't know how to play basketball. But there's a difference between range of motion that we hear about and range of strength. And if you're strong within that full range in which you can use an appendage, then you're more likely to prevent injury.
Yeah, I think that, and also just one-sidedness, you know, we get so used to when there's pressure relying on that good side, and then that imbalance can get extreme and or become apparent. And I think another thing to really remember is injuries are sometimes your best teacher, because they get you to stop and look. And when I got injured pretty bad when I was dancing. I like sprained my back. Like, you know, I could hardly do anything, you know, and so I'm like, I'm going to use this chance to listen to that. And so I started doing really simple things with my left side, because I'm right-handed. I started brushing my teeth with it or making coffee with my left side, like simple tasks. And that helped kind of kinesthetically embody things, you know, or just trying to do things on the other side, just as I get older, just helps out with that, because it's those micro muscles that are going to save you sometimes, see the smaller intrinsic ones, rather than the grows the big muscles there. You know, the small muscles are helpful.
We talk a lot in the fitness world about that, you know, stuff like the strong lifts program, 5x5s, doing your bench, squat, and deadlift, and that's all you need. But it's really not. The ability to, you know, open the refrigerator door without keeling over is really important. This reminds me.
Chad, you're muted. There you go.
Yeah, I guys saw that. However, the thing about it is, when we're training strength, and this is one of the things that I've learned through my work as a post-rehab specialist, trainer, and all of that, that I, you know, help people rehabilitate from injury, right, is that you only really do need maybe 4 exercises to work on your strength. Everything else should be movement, and it should not be done with strength.
Right.
So like for my strength, I do deadlifts with a straight bar and kettlebell. Those are my basic resistance exercises. And then I do body weight exercises. Everything else that I do is movement based, whether it be martial arts forms, qigong, you know, any of that stuff, because those are the 2 different things. We've talked about this in the fighting, where when you spar, you spar real light, and it's almost like play fighting and stuff like that. And then you train your power separate, and they will kind of naturally come together when you need them, right? And then you don't hurt your training partner again, and you don't hurt yourself, and all that. But so, and that's one thing that I think will get people kind of in trouble a lot of times, is people might go for like a heavy weapon, or like, oh, I'm gonna use this big huge heavy pole as a sword, and that's going to help my sword work. It probably won't. It will make you better with that really big heavy pole, that's for sure. But that pole doesn't feel or behave at all like your weapon. So what I've always said is train your strength separate, and then you train your technique, and you let your strength kind of support your technique.
We always want to be thinking about the end goal, right? So I think that a lot of the misunderstanding of how to utilize your body functionally in society at the moment is mistaking health and wellness and fitness in the literal meaning with athletics.
Right.
If you're going to train to run an Olympic sprint, then you're going to focus all of your training around being a really good sprinter. If you're going to be a marathoner, you're going to focus your training around being a marathoner. But if you just want to be a functional human being who is strong in every modality so that you can be useful with your body and continue to do so until into old age, then you're going to want to change up speeds and cadences and distances at which you're running. And the same is true for everything.
It's kind of like farming. You don't want to have that monoculture, right?
Oh, yeah.
We want to have a bunch of different, you don't want a whole big field. I mean, that just slays your soil or your jing or your chi or whatever you want to call it. I mean, that's it, you're done. And yeah, I think again, it comes to that masterpiece complex. People have these ideas of like, oh my, I want to run like an Olympian. So like you don't really.
Yeah.
Do you know the sacrifice it takes to get to that level?
Yeah, and the other thing too, I think is a plague amongst regular fitness, is what we call bodybuilding protocol, right? If anybody goes onto a fitness floor and they start doing weights and they start doing this, more likely than not, they're going to start with bodybuilding protocol. Bodybuilding protocol is like doing 15 reps of a curl or something like that. You do one here and slowly let it down, all that kind of stuff. And all of those exercises are designed to create something called sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, which basically makes your muscles swell with fluid in there. And the fluid is where it gets a lot of the sugar and the energy, so you have lots of endurance with those big muscles. They don't necessarily operate any faster or stronger. They're just bigger. And in some cases, studies have shown that they become a little bit weaker because of the deformation of the fibers as it gets larger. That's different than myofibril, which is creating more fibers in a muscle, which is more difficult, or anything like that. But that's like when people go out there and they want to do just kind of everyday overall exercises, they're going to go to these things which are there to make you look good, but not really meant to do much for you. And in fact, a lot of the bodybuilding protocol exercises are actually very injurious to you. And so we have a whole slew of people out there going into gyms and reading Men's Health and taking the exercises out of there and like destroying their spines and their hips and all kinds of stuff.
Well, it's all about defining your fitness, right? Like, what kind of athlete do you want to be? What do you consider fit? Bodybuilding is a very particular sport that requires you to specialize in very particular things. It also forces you into body imbalances because you're using that base of the Vitruvian physique that is not actually how humans are built all the time. Some people are, but like, look at Arnold Schwarzenegger and his pectoral development. That is a horrendous imbalance that ends up affecting his posture for the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and his movement, because when you have that much pectoral hypertrophy, you can't adduct as much as you usually can. So.
And so that, oh, what's up, Damon?
Oh, so one thing I'm thinking of is with age, one thing I wanted to make sure that we hit on is when you get a new practitioner that's older. And I think that's an important thing because there's a lot of people that come to martial arts and to lightsaber combat hall in a moment.
Yep. And that, I think that we actually have a specific person who's watching right now, probably. Let me check. Yeah, looks like it. So she'll be very happy about this. But yes, Damon, that is definitely where we want to go with this, because we know that there are older people who are getting into the sport, either with their kids, just as a lark, because, you know, or whatever, and they don't have any martial arts experience. And then approaching this stuff can be very daunting, not just from a technical standpoint. The technical standpoint is one thing, but from the fitness standpoint, when you first start doing this stuff and you realize, wow, this takes a lot of effort, right? It's not very easy. You know?
Yeah, people who make it look effortless are probably pretty expert at what they do.
Right.
And they probably put in time, a lot of injuries, and they've eaten probably a lot of bitter to get there. Like, you can look at it with any high jumps, or you can especially look at it and I always like to use ballet for this example, because if anyone needs to, just go look at Mikhail Baryshnikov back in the day and look at his jumps. It's just like, what? And it's like, wow, it's effortless. And people just think they're gonna get up there and jump like that. Some people think that, smart people don't. But it's that same cultivation in everything. And I think for the older practitioners that come to us, we need to have those softer ways of getting people into things. And it's like I'm part of a group called Parkour Over 40. And I like watching these people train. It's like they have these soft landings. It's like there's a yieldness to the movement. It's not about sticking the landing, which is great when your joints can handle it until you cripple yourself, you know. And also, if you have tons of safety mattage and stuff around, that's great. But when you're dealing with hard surfaces or outdoor surfaces, you have to take all of that yielding energy and put it into your body, and you have to do it for all time. And you have to not be attached to, like, I look at me doing kicks in my youth and I'm like, whoa, wow, whoa. But I also realize like, wow, there's a lot I still didn't understand, even though I'm zipping around.
Yeah.
You know, and it's important to not have a preciousness attached to what is it? It's like, it's somehow I wrote this down here. Hold on a second. Great skill. Is it great skill or great showmanship that people are really looking at? You know, because it's like, you can be a great showman and be a great athlete and you can give on a great performance, but I mean, but are you an airhead up here, for lack of a better, like, you know, you just flipping around and looking cool, but are you a thoughtful practitioner?
But are you looking cool even? I put this to people a lot of times. It's like the difference between Gene Krupa and Chick Webb. I don't know if you know who Chick Webb is.
I don't know who either of those people are.
Okay. Well,
Gene really? Wow.
and Chick Webb were jazz drummers back in the 30s, right? And
amazing.
They had this legendary battle, right? Gene Krupa was drumming for Benny Goodman. Chick Webb had his own band. They were at the Savoy. All accounts of this is just a legendary show, right? And Gene Krupa, if you look him up, he's very famous for being a freaking wild man behind the drums. He's like,
animal,
going everywhere, and his hair's flying everywhere, and everything like that. Chick Webb, on the other hand, was I think he had spina bifida, but he was disabled, right? And he played, but he looked like he wasn't doing much, right? And so when they did this, Gene Krupa talked about it, how he was giving it all he got. And then Chick Webb took it, and he basically thought he was making fun of it because he just wasn't doing anything. He was just sitting there, and he was playing way better than Gene Krupa was, you know, even by Gene Krupa's account. And it also kind of connects with something I took mine for a while. And one of the things they say all the time is when the character relaxes, the actor works hard. And when you're in mime, like if I'm going to put my feet up, there's no prop for me to put my feet up on. I have to lift my feet up and suspend them in the air and look like I'm sitting on a chair, right? And that's very, very hard, right? But there you go.
No, I think you're right. The more you it's Dunning-Kruger effect, right? The more thoroughly you understand a skill, the more appreciation you have for watching a highly skilled performer. If you have no experience with it, then you can do the armchair quarterback thing.
Totally. And that happens a lot, especially because everything's so fast now. Like there's no shortcuts in what we do. You're not going to download it into your head yet, maybe. You know, and it's also like there's a difference. I think those drummers are a perfect example because it's like one's going crazy like Animal from the Muppets, and then one has to, because of a constraint, has to have this polish that's very different. And as we get older, as I get older at least, I always have to have more. It's like taking a stone and smoothing it with water. That's what it takes. That's what it is. Rather than chiseling out. First, when I was young, I chiseled out what the hell I was. And now it's just like, oh wow, look at that. And then, oh, that didn't do anything. Oh, the sandpaper didn't do anything. I got to just sit there for aeons and let water smooth it out and be totally patient.
Yeah. Well, you know, even on a cellular level, our bodies become more efficient as we get older. I mean, yes, there's a point after 40 at which muscle mass starts to deteriorate, but at the same time, there's a reason why the older you get, the fewer calories you need to maintain body mass.
Yep.
Your very cellular structure starts to understand how to utilize energy better. And your brain is the same way, yeah?
Yeah, it's called general adaptation syndrome. And it's it's actually a good thing to bring up for people who are getting into this because it's
gas. It's called gas.
One of these days, what?
Gas.
Only
general adaptation syndrome.
General
only you, man.
Anyway, when you see people, if I work in a gym, obviously my family runs a gym, right? You see people that have come in there for decades and they work out, they sweat, they do all this stuff, and they haven't changed in like 10 years. Like nothing has changed on them, right? They're still exactly the same shape. They have exactly the same skill level, fitness level, all that, right? And it's because of that very thing. Your body will adapt to whatever your lifestyle is kind of throwing at you, right? So if you get out there and you require it to do certain things, it will start to change itself so that it will be able, because it now knows that it's required to do that every now and then.
Man, the human body's amazing for that.
Yeah, it's the whole biological system is set up in that way.
And we as a culture are so obsessed with youth. Like, all those young people are going to be old people eventually anyhow.
Yeah,
they're all going to be old.
I chalk that up to being a biological organism. Biological organisms are saddled with this curse of by the time we know what to do, we're too old to do it.
Youth is wasted on the young.
Indeed.
I mean, who wouldn't want to go back, find yourself at age, say, 16 or 18, and give your own past self a good slapping around? That's what made Back to the Future science fiction.
Right.
In reality, Doc Brown would have just been smacking everybody for being teenage idiots.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And also, it's like no crazy training. I think what's also important is the process. As we get older, our process is more expansive.
Yeah.
Where like being a new practitioner in something, it's like you feel these great, you get these plateaus faster, I think. And then when you then you even out, and then it's this kind of slow grind, you could say, of like, I don't mean it in a bad way, but just of spiraling outward and outward slowly and slowly and slowly. And so a process you begin here when you're a new practitioner might feel the result there, but as you're older, the result is a much bigger process. And I think that's also when older people come into it and they're new to it, they have a little bit of, they have their wisdom of their age, but the new form of doing something, it can be a hard balance sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. And like we're saying, like if you do something, so I'll go to another little tip of mine, which is if you're going to lift weights, make sure they're substantial weights. Stay away from 1 pound, 2 pound weights, all of these ridiculous things, right? When you want to use weights, right? Pick up, like I like kettlebells, right? But pick up a substantial, something that's substantial so that you can work with it, right? Don't take a small weight and like do something else with it, right? If you're going to do something like if you're doing swords, take up your weapon and work with your weapon, right? If you want to walk, right, you can walk and you can try, you know, practicing, you know, that kind of thing. But there's very little metabolic benefit that comes from holding like 2 pound weights and walking around or doing another activity or strapping those weights on your ankles and wrists. They have a temporary effect, right? Like the batters who have the big weights on the bat, they take a couple of swings just before they go up to the plate, so they have a little bit, but that effect kind of diminishes pretty quickly afterward, after a few minutes. But if you can kind of avoid that, like avoid, I don't know what you'd call, you know, not knowing exactly what it is you're kind of going after.
Well, I think moderation is really important, because I think what can happen is people, when they're using those little weights and they're like, oh man, I feel so fast after I do my jabs with them or whatever, and then they start doing those really fast, but their body's not used to that extra 2 or 3 pounds on the elbow joint or the shoulder joint that gets extended out. So you have this gravity pulling on the connective tissue. Right. And connective tissue has no blood in it. So when it gets damaged, it takes forever to heal. And it's like taffy. It's designed to respond to this. And so, you know, it'll fight. And the condition, those kind of conditioning takes a long time. Yeah. You can't rush into stuff like that. Muscles is like a sponge. It's pliable. You can do whatever you can do so much with it so fast. But connective tissue, bone, those types of things, again, it's like the rock. It's like it'll set over years and years of practice. You know, that's why you see old people walking around like this, because they never did anything.
Right. Well, I mean, and that's the thing, like connective tissue, like tendons and ligaments are mostly collagen, which is very, very hard. If anybody wants to know what collagen's like, if you eat ribs and you take that plasticky stuff off of the back of the ribs, that's collagen.
Delicious.
It is, isn't it? But anyway, it doesn't stretch. So all of these people that are telling you to go stretch your ligaments and stuff like that, first of all, don't stretch your ligaments. Your ligaments can only stretch 3% before they break, and you don't want that to happen. Second of all, they're connective tissue, man. Don't stretch them out. You want to keep it nice and tight, you know. But you're right. When you have an object in here, right? The holding the dumbbells when you punch, right?
Or ankle weights with doing like high kicks. You see that a lot in martial arts, dude. That just looks like, I think I tried it once. I did one kick and I was like, no way, you know. And luckily, I grew up knowing a little bit of anatomy. Yeah. And a little bit of anatomy goes a long way when you train for a long time.
Mm-hmm. No,
specificity of training is so important in this regard, because, I mean, you know, I boxed at a professional level for a number of years, and there is a time and a place for punching with a dumbbell in your hand, but only a buffoon is under the impression that it's going to make you punch faster and stronger. You're conditioning your shoulders, and it happens to be a particular weight-bearing exercise that is beneficial in that particular context. It's like any other type of exercise. But if you want to, I think what this touches on is the concept of, are you training to do something, or are you just trying to move because you were told you're supposed to be moving? You know, and this concept of prehabilitation, right? You were speaking earlier, Chad, about moving in space with your body, not under load, but just practicing your motion and being able to move healthily. And I think that's so much more important than, you know, walking laps around the mall. You know, at the end of the day, it's, can we get people up and moving, and can we get them moving in a way that accomplishes something?
Right. And that's another distinction that we got to make between fitness and weight loss. A lot of people are doing like this walking and all that kind of stuff because they're trying to just basically just increase the amount of calories that they're expending in a day. And their goal is just weight loss. Weight loss is not fitness. I mean, if you want to hook yourself up to an IV, you'll lose the weight. You won't be healthy afterward, but you know.
I like the potato chip flavored version myself. Just stick it right in there.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. But no, you're right. It's if you want to lose weight, just eat less. Movement is about accomplishment.
Especially when you get older, you know, it's like you can't, like my diet's changed so much.
Yeah.
And, you know, boy, when I was training, when I was younger in college, I was in my 20s, after a night of training, I would eat a whole pint of ice cream.
Yeah.
If I did that now, I mean, I could do it, but not on such a regular basis as I did back then. And, you know, and time to time would enjoy something like that. But it's like, you gotta moderate that. And hopefully if you're training right, your body kind of naturally does it. I think if you're not listening to what your body is, I think you get stuck in those habits. And then the habits don't, it's not that you have to I don't believe in like super canceling it. Like maybe sometimes you have to cold turkey things, but you know, they'll evolve into something, you know, like instead of 10 cups of coffee a day, I just have like one now. Not like I really had 10, but you know, it's like I do a little less and it serves me more because probably my body's more efficient.
Yeah, man, when I was training and fighting full time, like, you know, we'd go from one dojo to another, to the boxing gym, to sparring, to, you know, all in one day.
Yeah.
I remember we used to go to this restaurant in Japan. It's a chain joint called Gusto, and it's kind of like Denny's, but we'd go there and we would each get a medium-sized pizza, which in Japan is a large, and then we would get these big novelty-sized giant hamburgers and put it on the pizza and fold it in half and eat it like a panini. Think how much better I would be now if I hadn't done that.
Look, we could all trade stories. I remember when Little Caesars was doing the whole pizza thing.
Oh yeah.
I would just get two and I would just eat them both by myself.
Totally.
That's right.
I mean, we did it, and everybody does it.
Spending that many calories in a day, that's easy, you know.
And also, as I think what's real, so in my recoup time, I think one thing's really important, actually, no matter what age, is re-energizing and recharging and recouping.
Yeah.
Like usually after I work out, I try to get on, I mean, even when I'm at work, between, you know, when I'm teaching the kids or I'm working at the market, like on my breaks, I'll take a 10-minute nap. I'm known for being in the break room, being like, just like, you know, and that's one of the gifts of being on tour as a dancer. You can sleep anywhere. And it really helps, not only just physically, but also just, you know, mentally and psycho-spiritually, just to kind of just have some, you know, I mean, why do we put our computers to sleep? It's like, same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna.
So when you're
save
old,
that one for later.
Yeah. So when you're old, like me, take some power naps.
Yeah. No, recovery is one of the number one things, even in top level athletics, right? So like, you know, I deal a lot with collegiate and professional athletes and stuff like that through my dad's past and all that kind of thing. And you see that all the time. you know, the I kind of lost my thought there. Oh, well.
I think you're on the right track, and a lot of people, especially in our space, they get the wrong idea. Nobody, I think, wants to talk about it very often, but a lot of folks, especially in the 20 to 40 age set, were inspired by popular culture to get into some form of athletics. I know that in the bodybuilding space, everybody loves Dragon Ball, man. Everybody loves that show. It's Journey to the West, for Pete's sake. And they don't train intelligently in the show. Those guys don't make
Yeah,
enough
right.
of an effort to heal. And it gives this weird cultural rhetoric that we then learn from the strip mall taekwondo joint too. If you want to get better, just train a lot. And nobody pays attention to the part where you're supposed to be sleeping 9 hours a night and eating a healthy diet and getting enough rest.
Yeah. Oh, right. That's what I was going to say. The recovery thing. We're constantly trying to get at athletes who are, like collegiate athletes. They're young, to recover, right? They either constantly want to play or whatever. In Eastern Europe, they make athletes take 2 weeks off periodically throughout their season, right? Or through their training season, right? So my sister-in-law swam in Poland when they were in Poland, and they would swim and train real hard, and then they would take 2 weeks where they could not do any swimming. They could do other athletics, but they could not do swimming, right? And these layoffs allow your body to adapt to what you've been doing. So when you go back to that particular activity, you are now stronger and faster in that activity.
Yeah, you always need an ebb and tide with any art. It's the same thing when I compose music. It's just like if I have my nose to the grindstone and I'm stuck on one measure of music and I'm going breaking my, so you got to just stop.
Yeah, it's like
walk away. It's not going anywhere.
It's like when you misplace something, and the harder you look for it, the more frustrated you get, and then the harder it is to find. And then
that's a perfect example. That is absolutely a perfect example.
It's my way or the woo way, right?
Yeah.
That's funny, dude. There's also a great Taoist saying, rare fruit ripens late. There's a lot of people that don't really, like, I feel like I'm kind of like this. Like, I felt like I did pretty good when I was younger, but I feel a lot better now. I feel better with my martial arts technique and everything, and the way I perceive things, and way more confident in my ability than I was when I'm younger. But I don't really see that in everybody. In a lot of people there are, but in some people it's not. And I think there's two types. There's the people who learn really quick, and then there's these process-based learners that take a lot longer. And it's like, it's good to try to figure out which one you are and honor that. If you learn things really quick and you go, know that about yourself, but realize that that's going to have to change as your body changes. And if you're a process-based learner that takes a long time to get things in the beginning, your frustration just needs to temper down, and you have to trust in the process of learning it. Fast to learn, fast to forget sometimes too.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Let's see if we got anything on as far as questions here.
Cool. Oh yeah, our time too. I don't have a clock where I'm at.
Oh, we got about 10 more minutes here.
Oh, wow, cool. I'm really glad we're talking.
Who's going anywhere these days, right?
This depends on what you mean, man.
Yes.
You're astral projecting again, dude.
Yeah, dude.
So, one thing,
Thunder Country right now.
One thing, if anybody knows who Sammo Hung is, he has a great saying, or he said a great thing on that one kind of crappy TV show he did over here, Martial
Law. Yeah, dude.
Where Arsenio Hall says, how do you do that when you're so fat? And he says, when you're so out of shape. And he says, I'm not out of shape, I'm just fat. And that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true. You can totally be, do not think that because somebody's carrying on some extra pounds, or they're not, that they're either really, really fit or really, really not.
Yeah, that's a huge assumption. And those those underestimating assumptions, always trouble.
Oh, with fighting, never underestimate anybody.
Judge me by my
Always
size, do you?
trouble. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I am
Always
very
trouble.
invested in people underestimating me. That's why I never correct anybody when they tell me that I suck.
Well, there's so many, you know, my grandfather was a Korean War vet, and, you know, he was real kind of soft spoken, and, you know, he's kind of taller and thinner and stuff like that. But even as he got older, it's, you know, if push came to shove, it's like he was the kind of guy that, you know, Union kind of Irish dude, Korean War vet that carried a pool cue in his Ford Festiva, right? Like, because like it's just a totally different generation. And but man, it gets that old soldier never die. And it's like, you know, he might not have had maybe the martial techniques I learned, but what he'd been through as a man and as a soldier, and what he carried with him into his old age with those experiences, he can't, you know, and he's just walking around in his Dockers and stuff, you know.
My a relative, an in-law of ours, Uncle Roman, over in Poland, was in World War II, captured, held in a POW camp, and executed out in a field, but survived. The guy put the gun right here, and the gun and the bullet went in his jaw and out his mouth. Right, so lots of blood, all that kind of stuff falls down on the face. The guy who shot him takes out a cigarette. He pops up and starts running. Right, takes 6 in the back. Right, falls down, is in the, you know, he can feel that he can move his pinky, so he knows that he's still alive. So he uses that to will himself back to life. Right, he spends like a week in the forest, right, running from the Nazis. Right, he hides in this farmhouse. Who says, you can stay here, but they were literally just here looking for you, so you have to leave. You know, and then he finally met some British soldiers, and he died at the age of 93 or something like that in Britain. Wow. Outlived 2 wives. So
makes me think of the stories of my personal idol in life's Captain Sir Richard Francis Burton, a guy who, you know, skinny as a rail, but he took a spear through the face and was shot and stabbed all in a 5-minute period, took out an entire tribe of people who were attacking his camp in Western Africa, put an unconscious John Hanning Speke over his shoulder, and proceeded to walk almost 200 miles to the seashore, where he flagged down a passing cargo vessel that then took them back to England. It was the 1800s.
Right. Yeah.
So there's another thing that comes to mind there. It's like all of these stories have amazing hardship and a different time. And I've noticed that people who practice stuff, well, maybe I don't know, when you have not just the bitterness of training, but you also have environments that test you and make you appreciate what you're getting. Right? Like, I appreciate my martial arts because they were very hard to find for me.
Yeah.
Now they're everywhere. Now martial arts is everywhere. But you know, I remember when I was first learning Japanese swordplay when I was at the Danbun school, and I needed to get a bokken, I had to drive to San Francisco to get it. And it was a 6-hour trip there that I woke up at 6 in the morning, got it, turned around and came back. It's not Amazon. And so it's like when you just value things more, when you value things more like that, you don't let them go easy. You find a way to adapt it to where you're at. And I think there's a type of grit that I think can sometimes be missing in things. Not to mean that you got to, like, you know, be mean. That's not grit. That's something else.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right. I recently was reminded of and rewatched that famous promotional speech given by Dusty Rhodes back in the 80s. You guys remember Dusty?
Mhm.
So he gave that hard times speech, and that's been a motto of mine recently. Hard times make better men.
Being a
I
dark
mean,
sider, I always say they also make really, really bad men.
They can,
depends
yeah.
on your point of view, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think my main takeaway from aging as a martial artist and also being a dad is, realizing how to retain the expertise of what I know without having to present it the same way I did in my youth.
Mhm.
And that's an evolution that takes a lot of time. And that's also, you as a practitioner who gets older, you have to admit what is difficult and
Yeah.
what is hard for you to do anymore. However, once you do that, a space opens up and something else happens.
Yep.
And not only that, you see your students start doing it and then you feel good. I mean, at least I do anyway. Why would I want my students to be worse than me, right? You find that a lot too.
Exactly.
What? God.
Yeah. That the people who try to like shame their students, it's like,
Missing the point.
but if they suck, then you suck. What's the win here?
Which gets into what I think is probably the single leading cause of injury among martial artists, and that's letting your ego get out of control.
Word
Right?
up.
Like the strip mall taekwondo instructor, Master Ken, he's got the huge ego. He can't let his students become better than him. So that is only going to attract students who have huge egos. And, we get into this whole Sith rule of two thing if you want, but at the end of the day, it's you hurt yourself when you have an ego. So learning that level of humility is so, so important.
Right.
Yeah, and not many doors open up for you when you're.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Oh,
He froze. Well,
maybe he'll pop
hopefully
back.
he'll come back. Okay.
Yeah, let's give him a minute to reset.
Sorry, you guys, the power went out. Are you
Oh,
there?
Oh,
geez.
wow.
Oh, crazy.
Everything okay?
Yeah, the power went out, dudes. If that happens, yeah,
Back?
the power went out. We had a small brownout. Yeah, we're back.
Wow.
But
All right. What were we saying right before that?
Ego.
Ego.
Don't
Yes.
drop
Yes.
it.
Invest in loss is what we say a lot of times in Chinese. You're going to learn more from your failures than your successes. That's something that's always going to be there. And that's probably a really good thing to focus here on right at the end, because everything that we've kind of said is really going to be boiling down to this, is that you have to train to your own ability. You have to train to your own body. You have to train to your own age. You can train at any age. You just have to be cognizant of what's going on. If you're not used to being in your body, if you're not used to feeling that, all that, take it very slow. Be very deliberate with everything. And remember, you're trying to just very gently.
can you guys see me now? I'm back.
Yep. And just very gently nudge your parameters out, right? So you're not trying to rip your body apart and all of that kind of thing. So much of what happens in our body is intuitive, so it doesn't go into our conscious mind. So just by bringing it into our conscious mind creates new scenarios for our body and motor learning. That there. This is what forms are for, right? They're not for fighting. They're for movement. And then we take that movement and we put them. Oh, there he goes. And then we take that movement and we put him in. Put it in whatever context that we have.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think he's getting reset here.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There was a power outage. It just whacked everything out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Cool.
So yeah, dropping ego, and it's equally important to be pushing your limits, but not to try to smash your limits and then you don't get to train at all. And to have training partners, if you have an instructor, having the right instructor, because they should respect those limits and try to help you push against them.
And even all great experts have mentors. I still have mentors, even though I have many, many students. I still have people. I mean, it's really, really important because, you know, it helps you just get perspective. And your mentors can be your colleagues, like I have you guys.
Mhm.
I also have other teachers like in music and even past martial arts teachers that it's like, wow, if you're really stuck, I need some 2 cents. It's not like you need to be like, teach me the way or something, you know, it's just,
Right.
you just need it as you get more skillful. I think it's smart to have a community at large you can rely on.
Yes. Yeah. And as you get older, you definitely worry less about winning, worrying less about this, that, you know.
You do? That hasn't
The
happened.
phrase
to me
old
yet.
age and treachery starts to take on a lot
Old
more
age and
for you.
treachery, yeah.
Sure, you're trying to kill your apprentice tries to kill you. It's a whole thing.
It's a
But
happy,
the
happy
point is
time.
don't get distracted, you know, especially if you're older and you're getting into this, right? Take it slow, right? There is no race. Say, oh yes, but I'm older. It's like, come on.
Yeah, and the turtle
There's
won the
nothing-
race anyway.
There's no Star Destroyer that's en route for a duel for you right now, you know.
It's that scene from well, we don't know about that. It's that scene from either Seven Samurai or Magnificent Seven, depending on if you like Easterns or Westerns. But the man who's the best in the world with a gun and a knife, who does he compete against? Himself.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Always compete against somebody better than you. Right? Because if you're not competing against somebody who's better than you, you know that they're worse than you, then you're bullying somebody. And
Seven
that's
Samurai is sad, dude, because that master swordsman gets shot. Isn't the super skillful swordsman, doesn't he get shot?
Yeah, I mean,
Seven
basically,
Samurai, yeah.
it's people forget almost everybody dies.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's a Kurosawa movie.
yeah. Incredible film.
Yeah. Actually, it's an Asian movie. I mean, very few characters get out of Asian stories. If you've ever watched Hong Kong cinema, like
Yeah, that's a good point.
wuxia movies, it's just like, is anybody gonna live? What the?
Nope. Monkey will live. Monkey always comes out somehow.
Right.
Yeah,
But
we
then
do.
he goes sulking off because he's lonely because everybody else died.
For
Anyway,
5 minutes till he gets drunk again.
yes. Well, so do you guys get anything to wrap up here before we close off the evening?
No, it's a great conversation. I again encourage anybody who's watching who knows me through social media, have any age-related things, you know, contact me. I'm always available with that. And I think, yeah, just be patient. If you're patient with yourself, you're going to be patient with others, and you're going to be patient with your training.
Right. Yep.
It's a great point. Yeah. And I mean, just to reiterate, of course, patience, be intelligent with your training, but push yourself, drop the ego, find people to train with who also are dropping the ego. And we all have different areas of expertise. And if anybody watching wants to get a hold of us, we're all pretty available.
Yep. And remember, success breeds success. So if you can do something, do that. Do it over and over again. So like if with a pull up, if you can't do a pull up, just work to get doing one, and then do one, but do one periodically through the day, and do that for like 2-3 weeks. Then do two. Right? Sooner or later, you're going to end up doing 10 without even thinking about it. That's the way you want to take it, right? Don't rush, take your time, enjoy the journey. Like you said, try not to put ego into it. And ego doesn't necessarily mean that you're proud. It just means that, you know, it's like, don't take failure as like, oh no, I'm done, right? Don't let that.
Have a relationship with your ego. You don't necessarily need to completely obliterate it.
No, failure, like I said, failure is my best teacher, right? I've learned more from failing at something than I've ever. In fact, that's why we spar. We spar so we fail, right? We don't spar.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
Right? It's like, I want to see where is this weak, right? Boom, boom, boom.
Mhm.
Okay, there, and there. So that when I get into a position where I don't want to lose or whatever, I have the information to do it. So, all right. Okay, well, I will leave us there for tonight. We're a little bit,
Cool.
but that's it's a good topic, and we've got good people talking about it. So, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody out there in YouTube land and such. We will see you this weekend, and next weekend is our 7-Form Symposium. We're going to have a couple of special guests that will join the conversation, but it will be right here on the channel again. So we will see you then. Patience, practice, perseverance. Happy sabering.